Hola class, how we doing? Welcome to chapter 6 and chapter 7, which chapter 7 I'll do in another video. But chapter 6 and chapter 7 feel very, very familiar to me because when I think of Salesforce management from the academic perspective, a large chunk of the number of papers that are in the Journal of Personal Selling and Sales Management, Industrial Marketing Management, Journal of Marketing Theory of Practice, all tend to be in this space, chapter 6 and chapter 7. They seem very comfortable for me. It's particularly all the elements from this model. And we're going to spend, the reason why we did chapter 6 and chapter 7 together is you will see that there is an awful lot of familiarity amongst these topics, areas, for instance. But this model here, which is kind of complex with a lot of arrows, we have these personal, organizational, and environmental variables. They go direct, they have a direct relationship onto performance, but they also impact role perceptions, aptitude, skill, motivation, which then go into performance. Performance also can come back and impact these, or motivation particularly, also with satisfaction. And we have some rewards and we have satisfaction. So let's talk about these individually. When we talk about role perceptions, we're really talking about conflict and ambiguity. And these two roll up into one thing called role accuracy. How accurate is your role? It's very accurate if there's no conflict and little ambiguity. It is very inaccurate if there's lots of conflict and lots of ambiguity. So role conflict is when a salesperson believes there are more issues with what they're doing vis-a-vis, okay, let me say it another way. The role is defined very well, however, it's defined so well that some of the things that they're defined to do are in conflict with other partners, other members of the firm, other divisions. So it's almost like it's over-defined, or there's too much responsibility for this one particular role, it's how it's defined. Role ambiguity is when there's little definition. There isn't enough information to perform well. And you're kind of, well, what do I do? I'm unsure what to do given the situation. Aptitude means skill. Okay? Believe it or not, physical factors have been studied an awful lot. Particularly in the organizational management literature, where CEOs tend to be of a certain age, of a certain height. They tend to be male, although Sheryl Sandberg is changing that, hopefully. There is many studies on physical attractiveness and facial shape and nonverbal communication stuff, which is something I'm a big fan of. Aptitude, verbal intelligence, mathematical ability, sales experience, and then we have a lot of personality characteristics. This is where I like to spend a little bit of time research-wise. Empathy is a big construct for me. Ego, sociability, aggressiveness, dominance. One of the new ones that I'm looking into is called grit, which is your ability to see things through. Some aptitude characteristics, cognitive thought, intelligence. So this is thinking skills, this is pure intelligence, this is verbal communication skills, this is sales skills, and math. To be honest with you, I'm not so sure why all these math things keep coming up. Personality. There are lots of personality traits and individual difference variables. The need for control, the need for power, the need for achievement. How creative one can be, levels of self-esteem, how sociable, extroverted, introverted, how dominant. Are you a teacher? Are you a coach? Skill. Yes. Like skill. Vocational skills related to your profession, sales presentation skills, interpersonal communication skills. A lot of these are learned, hopefully. General management and dealing with people, and how you feel about your vocation. Motivation. We'll do more motivation in Chapter 7. How motivated you are is usually a function of what you expect, and availance is another word for weight. Your expectations and how much you weight certain things are the two main drivers of motivation. So when we talk about these drivers, some drivers have more profound meaning to others. Some people are looking for delight. Some people are looking only for a clear objective. Some people are looking for the team. Some people are looking for leadership ability, skills, or opportunities to be in the leadership role. Some people only want rewards. Now, if we think about some more personality or personal or organizational variables, these tend to be less about personality and more about description, like your job experience. What job experiences have you had? How close of supervision do you need? How much performance feedback do you want? Weekly, monthly, quarterly, once a year? How influential are you in determining what standards should be? How much control do you get? I mean, are you out there on the front line with any supervision at all? The amount of conflict and the amount of ambiguity also. OCB, organizational citizenship behavior, this is a fantastic construct. I've seen this in many, many, many studies, where the elements to OCB are sportsmanship, civic value, conscientiousness, and altruism. And what happens is, these are people that believe in the organization. They define the organization as part of themselves. And in so, they may be more motivated to do things for the organization. In other words, some people who are high OCB, define themselves in terms of the organization. Some people that are not, the organization is only a place that gives me a paycheck. I have no loyalty to them. Those kinds of mentality. Now, much of what we've been talking about tends to be North American or Western or individualistic culture scenario. There are many other cultures around the world, particularly collectivist type cultures, where OCB is the norm, because that's the dominant culture, going all the way from childhood to family to schooling to then work life. I mean, in some countries, the job you get out of college or out of training, you're going to be with that corporation. You don't switch corporations. So, just because something works in one culture, okay. I mean, you also have to understand, beyond the obvious cultural things that you have for global salespeople, you might have to be more creative. You might have to be a little bit more out there on your own. And especially as you move away from individualistic cultures, relationships are king. And you need the technological skills in order to communicate with the home office. So rewards, extrinsic, controlled by people other than the sales person. So this is your sales manager, your boss, someone along those lines. Intrinsic, this is more like internal motivation that the salesperson primarily attains within themselves. An intrinsic motivated goal would be something that the salesperson sets for themselves. An extrinsic one would be something that the sales manager or VP of Sales sets for the salesperson. Alrighty. This slide right here, think about, put a little star on it, a little mental model here. Next week when we do our Super Topic Talks in person, I'm actually going to bring one in myself on this one particularly. And we are going to look at the difference between high performers and low performers, job performance, turnover, and these components of satisfaction. So this is the Job Satisfaction Index. The scale's been used in a variety of sales studies over the years. I've used it myself. So it just has different dimensions, like the job itself, and these are the variables for that part of the scale. Satisfaction with my coworkers, my sales manager, company policies, my pay, promotion, and my customers. Moving on. Again, we have our role perceptions. If we have high conflict, high ambiguity, inaccurate role perceptions, that leads to stress and lowered performance. And we know that the opposite of this is also true. Now, role development stages, we also hit this a little bit in the next chapter as well. And so I'm only going to highlight it here, and it's going to be a little bit more in the other chapter. But broadly speaking, I want to say that salespeople tend to have a 6 to 12 month ramp up about, let's talk about a 3 to a 5 year window. Most salespeople take 6 to 12 months to ramp up. Between 18 months and 3 years, 4 years, they really hit their stride, where he or she is extremely comfortable, knows the territory, and is really doing well. But salespeople tend to need novelty, and something needs to change. Either they get moved up, or they get moved on, or they leave and switch positions. We're going to hit on more of that in Chapter 7. Perceptions on the job. So when we talk about this, we have managers, the company, the customers, and family. All this impact the salesperson. So then we get into our role expectations, ambiguity, conflict, and finally we get some kind of level of accuracy. How role accurate are we? I think we've hit this good enough here, but again, conflict and ambiguity are two of the main constructs that people explore in this area. I think this is self-explanatory here. So some of the conflicts of high conflict and high ambiguity is you have dysfunctional behavior from the sales force. It directly, and I can tell you this for a fact based on my own studies, increases people leaving the firm. It also has a strong correlation with performance, particularly low conflict, low ambiguity, higher performance. So here we have a nice big model. We have these variables. We saw this in an earlier slide in the chapter, which all directly tie into accuracy, conflict, and ambiguity. I actually believe that this is not drawn well, where these two should be, this should go into these two. Role accuracy is a measure of conflict and ambiguity, not different from ambiguity and conflict. All this goes into motivational components. Some of them have psychological consequences. Some of them have behavioral consequences. So the psychological ones are the intrinsic and extrinsic satisfactions, and also mental anxiety. And then the behavioral consequences after the fact is turnover, absenteeism, performance. And then we have some broad environmental factors, the economic conditions and how well the company is doing, how well the industry is doing, and also the employment rate. Because sometimes, negative things could be happen, but we don't see the turnover because the economic conditions aren't allowing easy leaving of a salesperson to another firm. So how do we manage conflict and ambiguity? Well, we need to have a stronger dialogue with our salespeople. We need to have closer role supervision. And more than anything else, there needs to be a back and forth between the salesperson and the sales manager to see if there is any ambiguity, that it gets worked out and it doesn't linger. If there is any conflict, that it gets worked out, it doesn't linger. Finally, role accuracy. And we do this role accuracy because we really want the most optimal job performance. And this all will go down into negotiations. It will go into promise of delivery times, handling customer issues such as back charges and customer adjustments. All these expectations lead into this. Okay? That's Chapter 6. I look forward to your questions here. I'm going to get started on Chapter 7 questions.